Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Good news, good news. We got updates from both the Russians and Ukrainians. The Russians stopped being, how do you call that, weasels and slackers. So they updated their Sputnik little front update. And in the meantime, cheers, my friends. Some good wine made by me. So let's go and see. We're going to start with Ukrainians first. And the people familiar with my updates, they know that I use the Ukrainians, which have this kind of format of update. And then I go to the Russians, who have it like this, with bullets of different significant color, means something. And let's start with the Ukrainians, and I will explain while I go on. Ukraine form. This comes from 18th of April 2023 at 8:18. Ukraine's defense forces repelled 30 Russian attacks in 4 directions. On Tuesday, Ukraine's defense forces repelled 30 attacks by Russian invaders on the Liman, Bakhmut, Avdiivka and Marinka axis. So the Russians are attacking right here. This is Liman is right here. This is Artemovsk, which is Bakhmut, Avdiivka, Marinka. So this is where the Russians are having forces trying to push forward here. Now the colors. Blue colors here is the Ukrainians shelled Russian positions. Red bullets, Russians shelled Ukrainian positions. Yellow, Russians downed Ukrainian aircraft, helicopters or drones. And the black dots are where actually people meet to shake hands with AK-47s. Okay? Alright, so let's go back to the Ukrainians. And I'm quoting, "The enemy continues to wage a war of aggression at the cost of heavy losses. The main efforts are focused on continuing offensive operations on the Liman, Bakhmut, Avdiivka and Marinka axis," the one I just showed, the black ones, even though the Russians did not use the Liman, which is right here. I'm gonna access each black bullet provided by the Russians and read what's in it as I go by. "Throughout the day, nearly 30 enemy attacks have been repelled in the specified areas of the front. The fiercest battles are going on Bakhmut and Marinka," the evening update reads. Marinka and Bakhmut. Okay. This is Marinka right here. This is Bakhmut. It goes by Artemovsk for the Russians. So this and this are the fiercest right here. Now, if you look at Avdiivka, almost encircled, Bakhmut almost encircled, even though it shows that supposedly almost the entire town is in Russian hands. We're gonna focus on these details as we go with the Russians' narrative. "Throughout the day, nearly 30 enemy attacks have been repelled in the specified areas." Okay, we said that one. "The Russian Federation continues to ignore international blah blah blah." I'm not gonna read that one. Why? Because that's, try to maul some empathy here, and I'm not for that here. I'm for information here. "The aggressor carried out 4 missile and 44 airstrikes and launched nearly 20 attacks using MLRS on the positions of Ukrainian troops and populated areas, where civilian casualties were reported. The likelihood of missile and airstrikes being launched at Ukraine remains rather high. According to the General Staff, the operational situation in the Volyn, Polisia, Sivershchnya and Slobozhanshchnya directions has not changed significantly. Units of the Belarusian armed forces continue to perform tasks in the area bordering Ukraine. Some Russian military units remain in the Belarusian territory." So the Ukrainians are talking about this area right here. Right here. This is Belarus, so at the border here. Nothing changed, just they move around, they keep the Ukrainians busy here, so they can't help here. The same here in Chernihiv, Sumy, the same thing. So now the Ukrainians are going to move to Chernihiv, and then to Sumy, Kharkiv, Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporozhye, and Kherson. So they're going to go like north, northeast, east, southeast, south. All right. The enemy maintains military presence in Bryansk, Kursk and Belgorod regions bordering Ukraine. So now they talked about this right here, this area. Belgorod right here, Kursk right here, Bryansk right here, the oblasts. Alright, during the day, the enemy shelled the settlements of 1, 2, 3, 4 in Sumy, so the Russians shelled Sumy region, as well as Kharkiv region. Let's see what the Russians say. They say yes, right here, nothing in Sumy. Oh, is right here a red one. So let's see what happened here. Bryansk region. Head of the region said that an attempt was made to illegally cross the state border near the village from Ukraine. The intruder blew up on a mined protective line. So he got blown up, I'm guessing. Now, we go here. This is the Ukrainians hitting Russian targets. So let's see what they did here. Head of the region, said that the village had come to blah blah blah. There were no casualties. Let's see here. Head of the region said that the village had come again. Shelling. During the repeated shelling, the shell hit again. Granary warehouse. So it's just the Ukrainians do what the Russians do, according to them, hit only villages and civilians, both of them. Again, there is destruction to a private residential building, things that I don't read because they all lie. And that things like this happen, but I don't want to listen to that. I want to hear what they did militarily. So here is Kharkiv. Let's see, this is the Russians. Let's see what the Russians did. Where you have like this, that means there's some infiltration. Russian forces foiled actions over Ukrainian sabotage and reconnaissance group. The same here. Let's see. The same thing here. Now here is forces of Zapad group struck Ukraine armed forces unit supported by artillery and aviation. The same thing here. The same thing here. This is probably the downed Ukrainian drone. Air defenses shot down a Ukrainian drone. All right. And here probably the same thing. So we move here to Luhansk and then Donetsk. Let's see what the Ukrainians have to say. Let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 settlements in Kharkiv region were hit by enemy artillery fire in Kupiansk direction. So this is exactly what I was talking about here. Back here. In a Liman direction, it's a little bit south. Liman is in this area right here. So in the Liman direction, the enemy tried to improve their tactical position, carrying out offensive efforts near the settlement of Dibrova, which brought no gains. And then 1, 2, 3 settlements of Luhansk region and 1, 2, 3 settlements in Donetsk region were hit by artillery fire. So they say all this red stuff here is just bombardments by the Russians. Now they go to Bakhmut. In the Bakhmut direction, the enemy continues the offensive. Heavy fighting is going on for the town of Bakhmut. And I gave about 6, 7, 8 settlements of Donetsk region were affected by enemy shelling. So let's see what the Russians say. So this is Bakhmut here, Artemovsk. Let's see what the Russians say. Assault detachments captured 3 quarters in the north, central and southern parts of the city. Airborne troops and units of the Yug group of forces provided support for the liberation of Artemovsk/Bakhmut and prevented enemy attempts to counterattack from the flanks. And this is, let's see what they bombarded in Chasor Yar. Supported by aviation and artillery forces of the Yug group struck Ukraine armed forces units which advanced for a counterattack. Ooh, we had only counterattack here. And here, the same thing. So they bombarded these guys and tried to counterattack to help these guys here, I guess, before they're gonna close it. Now the front, the Ukraine is gonna move to Avdiivka and Marinka. So let's see what they say here. In Avdiivka direction, the enemy carried out offensive operations in the areas of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of Donetsk region with no success, and 1, 2, 3, 4 came under enemy fire. So they say just shelling and nothing spectacular. In the Marinka direction, Ukrainian defenders repelled numerous enemy attacks. Also, 1, 2, 3, 4 settlements of Donetsk region came under enemy fire. Let's see what the Russians are saying. So Avdiivka, almost encircled as well, but you see nothing in the town yet. Fighting is Ongoing on the outskirts of the city, a command post of the Ukrainian Armed Forces 110th Mechanized Brigade was destroyed. Here, probably it's a shelling. Large caliber artillery struck the outposts and sites of temporary deployment of Ukrainian troops. The enemy suffered losses in personnel and military equipment. Okay, I like that compared with civilians were killed, 3 kids ran away, and 5 chickens flew. Anyway, so Marinka. Fighting is ongoing in the western part of the city. Large caliber artillery struck the outposts and sites of temporary deployment of Ukrainian troops. The enemy suffered losses in personnel and military equipment. Okay, now we know it. And here is just bombardments by the Russians. And we're going to go to Zaporozhye region. In Zaporozhye, again, the Russians struck towns here. Let's see what the Ukrainians tell us. The enemy ran no offensive operations in the Shakhtarsk direction. This is lower than Marinka. They shelled the settlements of on Donetsk region. The enemy remains on defensive in Zaporozhye and Kherson directions. Well, it doesn't look, by looking at this, is just reported by the Russians that they hit, actually. But it's true in Kherson. Here, these are Ukrainian attacks, and these are, I don't know yet what. We're going to find out, though. The Russians shelled Novopil in Donetsk region, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in Zaporozhye region, Anatonivka in Kherson region, and the regional center of Kherson, where civilian casualties were reported. Ukraine's air forces carried out 3 sorties targeting enemy clusters and an anti-aircraft complex. I would like to know that one. Rocket and artillery units hit 2 enemy clusters, an E-warfare station, electronic probably, and another important military facility. I would like to know what important is. Alright, so let's see what the Russians say. Let's see here, the red ones, what the Russians did to the Ukrainians, and then the other way. So this is in Nikolaev region. Russian forces destroyed a fuel depot for Ukrainian military equipment. And this one, Russian forces destroyed a fuel depot for Ukrainian military equipment. Okay, in two cities, 2 towns. Oops. Let's go and see what the Ukrainians did. Ukrainian forces shelled civilian infrastructure. This comes from the Russians, so we move on. Ukrainian forces shelled again civilians. Again, civilian. All right. Ukrainian forces fired 4 shells at the settlements using barrel artillery. The 8 shells at the village using barrel artillery. So I don't like these kind of things. Ukrainian forces fired 11 shells at the settlements using barrel artillery. So basically, you know, when the Russians are talking about what the Ukrainians are shelling is all civilians. When I go here at the Ukrainians, they tell me that the Russians are hitting only civilians. So that's why I don't read that, because they are focusing on that one, and I don't even need to mention that, not because I don't care. But first, I can't verify, and they're all lie. That's the first one. And I want to know what happened with the war, not how many civilians die. Because you can kill, I don't know how many civilians these guys were going to report and these guys were going to report. That doesn't change anything in the, the whole offensive or defensive operation. I want to know what the military does. Is going to win? Who's going to win? In the process, as I said, 3 chickens, 5 pigs, and 5 turkeys were fried. I personally don't care, and that's why I don't cover it. Regarding civilians, I avoid doing that because they all exaggerate and minimize. Exaggerate when our civilians were killed and we didn't kill anything over there, so they minimize, and vice versa. So this is it, my friends. This is an update on what happened today on the 18th of April 2023, and I'd like to look over the general front. I don't like doing the details. I always like macro, not micro, in this kind of instances. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.